Good morning, everyone. Dying, Christ destroyed death. Rising, Christ restores our life. Jesus said, I'm the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, though they die, yet shall they live. Dearly beloved, we have gathered here this morning to witness to our faith and to our doubts and our questions as we celebrate the life and the legacy of Ronald Jacob R.J.Owers Jr. My name is Reverend Emily Fleming, and I am honored to be with you on this most difficult of days. Though we mourn, his force will always be with us. Yes? All right. That was supposed to be a joke, guys. I'm not a Star Wars, Star Trek fan, but my husband told me that you would think that was funny. I'll tell him you did not think it was funny. Okay. I'm going to pray the forces with me for the rest of the service then. All right. Today, we are going to honor RJ's legacy in all the best ways that we can. We're going to share stories. There is an open time of sharing following the eulogy. So if you have funny anecdotes or stories that you would like to tell, we will invite you to stand where you are and do those. If you are loud, if you are a quiet person, we would invite you to come here and say them into the microphone so that his family and friends can all hear and celebrate and laugh with us. I also invite you at this time to silence your watches and your cell phones and any other devices that may distract us from this time. It's really important in our busy world that there are moments that we can shut down all of the chaos and all of the things trying to gather our attention so that we can focus just for a little while on RJ and on his family and his friends and his colleagues this morning. So I invite you to join me in an attitude of prayer as we begin. Loving God, we know that you are the one who gives us life, and you are the source of our strength. Even in our grief this morning, let us feel your nearness and your compassion. Grant us grace that in our pain we may find comfort, in our sorrow we may find hope, and in death we may find the promise of resurrection and life eternal. Lift us beyond the shadows this morning to see you and your future for RJ and for us all. Amen. We are going to sing a little bit this morning. It's Amazing Grace. There were some copies in the back if anyone needs to. It's the Alan Jackson version. So I'm Methodist. So if you would like to stand or rise in body or spirit, we good Methodists can't get a full breath without standing. So just stand up even if you don't feel like singing. And we're going to sing Amazing Grace. And there's a long intro, so don't worry. Can we have the music a little louder? Thank you. And if you don't twang Southern like me, it's okay. You can still join me and Alan when we're singing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Now there's a musical interlude. and verse 3. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. And verse 1 again. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you. You may be seated. This morning, we've chosen a scripture reading from the New Testament book of Romans, chapter 8, verses 38 through 39 from the New Living Testament. And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate any one of us from the love of God that is revealed to us through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This morning, we are blessed to have two close friends and colleagues of RJ to share their eulogies with us. So I'd like to invite Mr. Chip Spryer to come to the front now. Thank you, Chip.
It's always good to follow a fellow Methodist. I am doing this eulogy for the first time. It's my first ever eulogy, so please cut me some slack. As we progress through life, we are known different ways by different groups of people. Growing up in your town with your classmates and your teachers, you're known one way. Going to your faith community, you're known another way. And in your work life, you're known yet another way. Now, me and RJ have another side. I met RJ first in 1986. Big election year. All the statewide offices were up. He was working for a little-known West Slope state legislator who was vying to become the next lieutenant governor. And I was working for another statewide candidate. And as often happens at these campaign cavalcades, we were standing in the back of the room at a hall where we were waiting for our candidate, our respective candidate, to either show up, start to speak, finish speaking. And as happens, you're killing time and you're chatting. And RJ said to me, he thought that the Democratic Party made a mistake in 1972 by nominating George McGovern. And, you know, who's going to disagree with that? And that they really ought to have nominated U.S. Senator Henry Jackson from the great state of Washington. Well, this set me back because RJ was a few years younger than me. And I was like dumbfounded that A, he knew who Scoop Jackson was. And B, he knew that Scoop Jackson was running for president in 1972. Didn't do anything, but he ran. And I thought to myself, this guy is a committed politico to know this stuff at his age. So as the events occurred that year, his guy actually did win and did become lieutenant governor. And he went on to work on the lieutenant governor's campaign that he ginned up called ABC, Always Buy Colorado. Anybody remember ABC? And RJ was appointed by the lieutenant governor to be the point outreach communicator on this. And therefore, I saw RJ speak at events about the Always Buy Colorado campaign. Always dressed professionally, always spoke forcefully and persuasively, always had a handout with his contact information and invited people. And then after he was through speaking, he would work a room like this. And he was a hail fellow well met, glad-hander par excellence, always had a smile, always had a quip. And I thought to myself, this guy is too good for the lieutenant governor. And I was right. And so after the lieutenant governor, he went off to eventually work as a top aide to a city council person on the east side of Denver, where Mary Alice and I live now. And this was after the Lowry Air Force Base had been decommissioned. And it was a major concern of the community, not only the neighbors, but the city, of what was going to happen with that. And so he and his councilwoman were deeply involved with the bringing to life of Lowry as we know it today, a new community. He worked with the surrounding neighborhoods about their concerns. He worked with council people in Aurora, because Aurora and Denver were throwing together to try and take possession of Lowry and redevelopment. And of course, he worked with the councilwoman on pressing the United States Air Force on doing environmental assessment, remediation, and cleanup. I mean, it was a big frickin' deal. And he had a lot to do with it. Subsequent to that, he and I ended up together in the Denver auditor's office, working for this gentleman over here, Donald J. Mars. And there I discovered that RJ was a really amazing researcher. I mean, he dug for facts like nobody I knew. And as we were going through all the audits, past and present, of the city, he said, you know what? The city of Denver is long, long overdue for a charter convention to rewrite the charter of Denver. And I was reviewing the same material, and I said, God, I have to agree with that. I mean, this is outdated, outmoded, and a lot of extraneous and antiquated language. So we presented this as one of our staff meetings to Don, and he did not think it was such a good idea. And we because of RJ's work with the city council, he checked around a few of the councilmatic offices, and they did not think it was a good idea. But to his credit, like a dog with a bone, he never gave up the idea that we still to this day need a new charter convention for the city and county of Denver. I was, how do I put this? Somewhere, whether it was the College of Santa Fe courses that he took in poli-sci or American government, and whether it was being an intern for Congressman Ray Kogosic, or whether it was, and I think this is probably the most part of it, his dad, running and being elected the county commissioner in Chaffey County. RJ got he got it. He, in terms of, well, now I'm getting personal. He embraced the concept that politics is a device to help improve the lives of people and the life of your community. And he wanted to be a part of it. He used his political skills eventually to work for the ACS Cancer Action Network, working with state legislators on preserving funding for cancer research at Anschutz, working on legislation to mandate coverage in insurance policies for what we now regard as routine cancer testing. He worked out in municipalities across the state using his political skills to benefit the greater good of the community. I think that we should all be that way, and I have a quote that I think applies. This is from a former president of the United States, from the neighboring state of Kansas. For politics ought to be the part-time profession of every citizen who would protect the rights and the privileges of free people and who would preserve what is good and fruitful in our national heritage. Politics must be the concern of every citizen who wants to see our nation well-being increased and strengthened. In that combined sense, politics is the noblest of profession. And I think RJ was a pretty noble guy.
A beautiful tribute, thank you. And next, Mark Anderson.
That was really beautiful, Chip. That was the RJ I knew. It's a beautiful spring day in Colorado and a beautiful day to celebrate RJ. It means a lot to see so many people here that were touched by RJ. I'm Mark Anderson, and I got to work with RJ for the last 10 years as a colleague here in Colorado with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. I join many of my colleagues that are here, past and present, along with a dedicated core of volunteers and cancer advocates that are here and many that are joined by the streaming of this service, as well as our teams in Washington, D.C., and across the U.S., because RJ was known across the U.S. by many of our cancer advocates. Our president, Lisa Lacasse, wasn't able to be here, but she sent this message. RJ's passing is a tremendous loss for all of us at ACS CAN and ACS. RJ brought compassion, integrity, and kindness into every relationship and every piece of work he touched. His contribution strengthened our organization, but more importantly, he strengthened us. My heart is with his family, his loved ones, and all those who worked closely with him for over 2 decades in Colorado. RJ was many things to his family, to his friends, and to those of us who had the privilege of advocating alongside him. To me and to those of you listening, he was someone we depended on and learned from. Someone who showed up every day with purpose and a true heart of gold. He spent 22 years at the American Cancer Society and ACS advocating for cancer patients survivors, and their caregivers. As the government relations director for ACS CAN, RJ worked at the state, federal, and local level, passing meaningful and impactful legislation, benefiting cancer patients, their families, and caregivers. RJ deeply believed in the mission and the power of grassroots advocacy and the idea, as Chip mentioned, that policy can change lives for good. With his sharp intellect and formidable memory, and I mean formidable, public health in Colorado is stronger today because of RJ. Speaking of lieutenant governors, Chip, Colorado Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera wasn't able to attend. She's traveling today, but she sent this message. I am very saddened at the loss of RJ Hours, a dear friend, a pillar of the community, and a fierce advocate for Coloradans impacted by cancer. RJ dedicated his career to passionately pursuing legislative action to provide awareness, early detection, diagnosis, and treatment. His work saved thousands of lives and will endure long into the future. My heart goes out to RJ, his family during this difficult time. Advocacy work, which many of those in the room know, involves a lot of patience, a lot of persistence, and a lot of meetings. RJ somehow managed to do all three with grace and with far more patience than most of us had by the end of the week. If you work with RJ, you probably noticed that when things got stressful, somehow he did not. When the rest of us were reacting, RJ was already 3 steps ahead, calm, prepared, and ready to go. He didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. In fact, when someone was the loudest voice, he usually had already figured out how to move the conversation forward without raising his voice at all. He listened. He knew the facts. He definitely knew the history, and he knew the science. As the lieutenant governor said, his legacy lives on in the policies, in the volunteers, in the friends and the colleagues that he helped move forward, and the thousands of patients and families whose lives are better because of his advocacy, and the many volunteers he inspired, lifted up in this room and listening online. But on the work, many of us remember how RJ made us feel. One of RJ's favorite authors was John Meacham. And Meacham wrote, "We often talk too much and listen too little. The smarter route to winning a friend isn't to convince them that you're right, but that you care what they think." Very apt for RJ. And that is how he made us feel. He was generous with his time. He mentored without ego, and he treated people with respect, no matter their role or their title. He made space for others to grow and believed in people, sometimes before they believed in themselves. Maya Angelou said, "People may forget what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." So true for RJ. We won't remember every policy fight or every campaign, although he still did remember the city charter. But we will remember his kindness and his reassuring presence, and the way he made difficult work feel memorable. To Tammy, Jake, and Audrey, and many families and friends, please know that while you knew him in ways we never could, we were lucky. As his colleagues, you also shared him with us. And because of your love and support, he was able to give much of himself to others, and we are grateful for that. RJ's absence is going to be felt in moments when we instinctively think, "I'll ask RJ." I know my life will never be quite the same as for many of you, For some of us, the quiet times will hit us hardest. But we will continue to honor RJ by continuing his work and legacy with integrity, by fighting for patients and families with the same determination and compassion that RJ showed, by treating one another with the same respect and humanity that naturally came to him. RJ made a difference, not always loudly, not for recognition, but deeply and consistently. His impact will last. A favorite movie of mine is It's a Wonderful Life. Maybe many of you know this. It's a black and white. They usually show it around Christmas time. Kind of a tearjerker. It's about George Bailey, the main character who in the movie, and he's discouraged and considers whether his life has had any consequence or impact to anyone. He's joined by an odd character named Clarence, an inexperienced angel who says to George, who's played by Jimmy Stewart, George is played by Jimmy Stewart. Clarence says, strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives. And when he isn't around, it leaves an awful hole, doesn't it? Yes, it creates a hole. But we're going to help fill that hole. We're going to remember RJ and carry his legacy forward in our work and lives. His college friends from the College of Santa Fe made up a funny saying they would use. Bueno, bye-bye. Meaning a play on goodbye. We are a bit lost today without RJ, but we are lucky. No, we are privileged that we got to travel together for a time. And now to say bueno, bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark. That was also very beautiful. And you two gentlemen are obviously a very difficult act to follow. But we would love to hear from anyone else. There is, I believe, a live streaming camera. So if you want the people watching in Arizona and Utah and in other places, family and friends who couldn't be with us to hear your stories, I would invite you to come here. Don't worry. It looks scary, but it's just a microphone. It won't hurt you. So is there anyone else who has something that you'd like to share today with us? Thank you so much, sir.
I'm doing this because nobody else stepped up, so
We pastors always need one of you in every crowd. Thank you.
yeah, call on all my lawyer skills. And I didn't write anything. I'm Bill Fennell, or Fennell as I was in college with Ron, RJ. He's always been known to me as Ron, even though he's been known to you for a longer period of time than as RJ. But I listened to Chip and I listened to the other gentleman, and I like to think that the college was a place where Ron was in a bit of an incubator, and I was one of his experiments. I came in as a sophomore there. Ron was a senior. And one of the thoughts I've had in the last couple of weeks is that the single year with Ron at the College of Santa Fe seemed like 3 years to me. He was a really good friend and took me under his wing, was my campaign manager. He wanted me to be the president of the student body. And I was running against the local people from Boston, the Boston guy. Maybe he thought I looked like a Kennedy or something, I don't know, but that wasn't so much loved in Santa Fe at the time. Anyway, but we ran a good campaign, and I listened to you folks talk about his political acumen. He was definitely honing that in college. We've talked over the years about one of his favorite courses was a diplomatic history of America. And I wasn't in the same class as him because he had it a year before, but he told me about that class, and it turned out to be one of my favorite classes in college, and I appreciate that. I spent Easter with Ron and his family, and I have thought, should I share this story or not? But I will. We drove up from Santa Fe to Salida to his folks' house, and Annette, we drove on to Denver to pick you up from BYU, and you can imagine two guys who had spent most of 2 days, one up to Salida and then another up to Denver. There was no drinking. There was no other illicit anything, just laughter. Well, it is a good story, I think. And that is that we picked up Annette, who was coming home from BYU, and we had, like, two undergrad students were swearing like a couple of sailors. And I realized after a few minutes with Annette in the car, that every time we swore, her face lit up like, oh my God, I hadn't heard any of this in the last the last few months. And I thought that that was pretty funny. So I colored the conversation a lot more on the way back. So I'll miss Ron. I'll miss our occasional phone calls, always with some political insight. I think as I was driving over here this morning and listening to the other eulogies talking about Denver, whenever I would come to visit him, we'd drive around a little bit and he'd point out, I remember the Air Force Base they closed, and something needed to be done with that. He was always about the politics and always about caring about other people. And it's so great to see so many people here today to honor my friend.
Thank you. Come, gentlemen. You can, and there's plenty of seats here. If you want to come and wait on the dais, that's fine as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chanello. I worked alongside RJ as the grassroots manager. So on ACS CAN, we have like our government relations director, and then you work hand in hand with them as the grassroots manager. And so I know that I'm one of many grassroots managers in the room over a span of 20 plus years, which is not only a testament to how good of a colleague RJ is, but a friend. And I had a chance to share some words about RJ during one of our calls this week, and I just want to share that with the broader room. RJ was dedicated to ACS CAN's mission for more than 20 years. His relationships across the organization were vast and deep. His passing impacts many of us in a multitude of ways, especially his family, who we cared for immensely and spoke about often. We would spend a majority of our time talking about you, Tammy, Audrey, and Ronald. He loved you guys so much. I've come to know him very well over the last 2 years as the Colorado Grassroots Manager. And I remember first meeting him in person at the summer meeting. He offered his hand to me for a handshake. And I was like kind of like worried about how I was going to be working at the organization, but he was the warmest, sweetest, kindest guy I could have ever hoped to work alongside. And I remember not feeling any nervousness after I met him. I could tell you countless stories about how RJ is revered and respected in the Colorado political world, and getting to see that firsthand. I could tell you stories about how RJ would oftentimes caution me that sometimes people expect us to do more than just policy, and that I should be careful about what I get wrapped up in. Yet shortly after, he would still go above and beyond for our volunteers and anyone else who needed a helping hand. RJ was brilliant, and I think the best way to hold him in remembrance is to keep his memory alive through our own actions. And so I thought of 3 things that RJ inspired me to do and that I'll hold in remembrance thinking about him. The first is RJ probably forgot more than we ever know. He was an encyclopedia, a glossary, a dictionary, and a history book all in one. However, he never made you feel any less smart than him and always was open to hearing a new perspective. RJ taught me that the most brilliant people are never too smart to keep learning and listening. The second was RJ could talk. We had a Monday call that was set for an hour, but it went for 2. But he wouldn't just talk about himself. We would talk about the latest news. And once the business was done, he'd ask questions following up on previous conversations where I mentioned the detail about my family or the latest venture outside of work. We have these things called coffee chats where we like connect with each other across the organization. RJ was the original coffee chat. And he reminded us that no matter how busy we get, we should make time for conversation. You never know the last time you may speak with someone or make somebody feel heard. The last thing that RJ inspired in me is this. He'd always say, politics is a long game. You can't expect everything to happen at once. While RJ meant this for the political world, I think it applies to our shared grief today. It's a long process, and you can't expect everything to happen at once. So be kind to each other. And thank you so much, Tammy and family, for sharing RJ with us. It was one of my greatest honors to work alongside him and get to know him. And again, he loved you all so much. Rest easy, RJ.
A little ancient history. In September of 1975, which was almost 51 years ago, there was a young man, myself, that was newly ordained, and I was assigned to St. Joseph Parish in Salida. Well, my name is Michael DeSoyce. I'm a retired priest at this point. And there was this family that reached out to me. They lived on Highway 285, and they were the Hours. And Shauna, Annette, Mom and Dad, Don, and Ron. I can't tell you how many times I had Sunday dinner at their home. It was wonderful. I got to know them very well. And I have a little confession to make to you too. I am the reason Ron and Carla Miller from Salida went to the College of Santa Fe. Now, you may not know about that college, but when I was a younger person, my bishop at the time, Charles Buswell, Bishop of the Diocese of Pueblo, southern half of the state, let me finish off my college at the College of Santa Fe, which was a Catholic college operated and run by the religious order called the Christian Brothers. I loved it. I was there only 2.5 years, and I loved it. And when it was time for Carla and Ron to consider going to college, I took them down to Santa Fe. We drove down there, and they fell in love with it. And guess what? They both went there for 4 years and got their degrees there. And I see you're a graduate of the College of Santa Fe too. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And I kept in touch with Ron a little bit when he moved up here to Denver. Seems like we meet each other at funerals, and that's the last time I saw him, when I was at a funeral at Most Precious Blood Parish out on South Colorado Boulevard. And he spied me, and we had a wonderful visit. And Don, I have to mention to you about his brother Don. Don, you know, is a priest as well too. And Don talked to me when I was in Cortez, Colorado, and he said, "Do you think I'd make a good priest?" I was a little surprised. And I said, "Well, why don't you come on down to Cortez and I'll take you through a discernment process." And so he did just that. And he wound up studying for the Diocese of Colorado Springs because Salida had become a part of the new Springs Diocese in 1984. But he went to St. Thomas Seminary here out on South Steel, and he fell in love with the order that ran that. They're called the Vincentians, founded by St. Vincent de Paul. And what does Don do? He decides he wanted to be a Vincentian. So he became a Vincentian. And I remember so well, many years ago, going to the first Mass there at St. Joseph. The whole family was there and many other people. And so I have kind of kept in touch, not as well as I could with Don, but what a joy to be here today. And I've learned so much about him. You know, I only knew him as the parishioner in high school when I was there at Salida, and then a little bit about him and the College of Santa Fe, of course. But oh my gosh, what a legacy he gives us. And how beautiful in this Easter season that we just began that God has brought him home. And as we have learned from Jesus, the risen Christ, death is not the last answer. No, no. Death is the opening of our life for all eternity with God. So he is there with all of his relatives, his dad, and so many others. And they're looking down upon us. They live forever, and they're waiting for us. But I think Don and Ron, to be honest, would want us to live our lives the very best we can each and every day, and knowing that when that time comes to go home, our eternal home, we're going to be very surprised. How beautiful.
Thank you, Father Michael. From honoring Catholic tradition to the Latter-day Saints tradition, which I know is part of the family, to my Methodist roots. And no matter what you believe, it's an honor and a testament that you can be here together, to grieve together and also to remember together. Are there any other stories that are on your chest you just can't miss an opportunity to share? Yes, please. Yes, thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jody Radke. I am a regional director with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I've had the privilege and the honor of working alongside RJ on a number of tobacco control policies for well over 20 years. And I think it dates back to the days of smoke-free, when we passed smoke-free air policies that protected everyone's right to breathe smoke-free air. But one of, I think, my most memorable policy moments with RJ, going back to Chip's comments about RJ's commitment to quality and to research. We were working on a policy piece that would have restored authority to our cities and counties to work on tobacco control policies that protected their communities most directly. And some of that research involved going to the Colorado State Legislature's archives, and many of our new employed government relations directors might not even know what microfiche is. But RJ certainly not only knew what microfiche was, but went and resurrected all the documents from the late 60s and the early 70s, the first recorded committee hearings that were so critical and so important to the conversation to help our newly elected officials understand the context and the history and the importance of the work we were doing and why. And RJ invited me to come do the microfiche research with him. I declined. I felt he was in very capable hands. And we were quite successful in that journey and eventually getting that policy passed. I think, Tonello, to your point, policy is often not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so we eventually did pass that, and we passed that together. And I have so many memories of policies that we passed together. And I hope Colorado understands the investment of RJ's time and his heart to do exactly that. And the one thing I will say is Chip mentioned a lot of the downtime. For those of you who are in the Capitol together, we have a lot of downtime together. And we talk about a lot of things. But the one thing I will say that I remember about RJ, and you've heard it already, it's going to make me tear up. In the downtime, it wasn't only his commitment to his work. Tammy, I can't tell you how proud he was to be your husband. I can't remember a conversation where you didn't come up. And Jake and Andre, I can't remember a conversation where he wasn't so incredibly proud to be your father. You meant so much to him. He talked about you so pridefully. And his family meant more to him than I think anything. So I hope you remember that, because I know you will live without him, except in memory that he cherished all of you deeply. The one thing I'll just end on a lighter note. Tammy, I don't know if you knew this. Do you know that RJ loved to buy lottery tickets? Did you know that? I don't know. I don't know if anyone else knew that. In the dime town in the capital, I also can't remember a time where he and I weren't coming in from some other meeting or something. And I also share a love of lottery tickets. People don't know that about me, but now they do now. So he and I was always chat about this, and he always hold on to this moment of like when he would win. And so in his memory, Tammy, I actually, before I came, I bought a Colorado lottery ticket with the plus. And on my drive down, I tearfully told RJ, if I win today, I am making a public commitment that I will share part of this with you and the family on his behalf. I didn't know if anybody knew about him, but it's always a fun memory he and I share together. So rest in peace, my dear friend. And we'll think of you.
So those of you who pray now know what to pray for, okay? Winning scratcher. Is there anyone else? Thank you, ma'am.
I also did not prepare anything, but I've been so inspired by the comments so far. Dana Swankowski, formerly, now Dana Malik. I met RJ almost 19 years ago when I got the job as grassroots manager under his leadership. I didn't know a soul in Colorado, and I was reeling myself from the death of my own father 2 years prior, trying to figure out some direction in life in my early 20s. He called me kiddo then. He called me kiddo well into my 40s as well. Always the mentor, always the heart of gold. And the first issue we worked on, coincidentally, was a requirement that insurance companies cover colonoscopies starting at the age of 50. Colon cancer is what my dad passed away from at 56. And he knew not only that I had imposter syndrome and I was not sure of myself, coming to a place where I knew no one. And he took me under his wing, made me feel confident in myself, and also made sure that I understood that getting through grief is woven into the work that we were doing at ACSCAN. And he pulled me into that campaign probably more deeply than he would have someone else, because he knew that it was part of my healing process. And I will never forget that. I will never forget his heart. And I will miss him deeply. He was such a good man. Thank you. Rest in peace, my friend.
Well done, kiddo. Thanks, Dana. We're probably about the same age, so it's especially funny. Is there anyone else? Thank you.
It's hard to follow you, Dana. My name is Molly Daniels, and I worked with RJ for years when I was at the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network out of DC. And even though I worked in DC, I bought a home in Denver, so I was here frequently. And so RJ and I built a friendship. I was especially interested because he was working so hard on smoke-free Colorado. I had a lot invested in that. And I was tried not to look over his shoulder. Actually, nobody could look over RJ's shoulder. He always had it down. And I loved him so much because he was such a political junkie, and so was I, and he would talk about it for hours at a time, as many of you know. And we would talk and talk about politics, and we would talk and talk about smoke-free Colorado. The bill finally passed, and I said to him, RJ, let's take the staff and the volunteers and let's go out and celebrate. Let's go to a place that was a smoking bar and let's go celebrate. And we went to the Cherry Cricket. And it was my favorite bar. I think it was RJ's favorite bar too. So we went out the week after the bill passed, and I was so proud to be celebrating this law. And I was so proud of the folks in Colorado who had made it happen. And we're sitting in the bar, and there's still a little smoke, it took a while for it to all get out, but we're sitting in the bar. We'd ordered cheeseburgers. I think, Martha, were you there that day? I think you might have been there with it. Oh, you weren't? Well, you should have been. Where were you? I think Chad was there. We're sitting in the bar. The cheeseburgers are being eaten. I think there were a few beers. And I said, let's raise a glass to RJ because he made this happen. And so we raise a glass, and I look at him, and I can tell he is totally not there. And I'm like, dude, this is a big celebration. You are so responsible for helping this happen. Why aren't you focused here? And he said, do you know that there are still 2 restaurants in DIA that let people smoke? And I'm like, this is a very true story. And I'm like, RJ, be in the moment. We can do that later. He was always thinking of the next thing. And what a legacy to your family. What a legacy. We can celebrate that he literally saved thousands of lives with the work he did in Colorado. But I will never forget RJ with thinking about how he was always looking at the next campaign. And I think he's looking down right now, and he's thinking, okay, this is great. Let's have this moment of celebration. What are y'all going to do about the midterms?
Thankfully, that's not a question my profession is called to answer. Good luck, y'all. That's all that I'm going to say. Is there anyone else?
In a tribute to RJ, I've prepared a 90-minute presentation on Colorado's Tabor laws. Oh, so buckle up. No, in all seriousness, so many people that RJ have impacted in his career have been able to speak today about his policy wins and the impact that they've had on him, or that he had on them as coworkers. I just want to take one quick moment, if I can do my best, because I had, for a very brief time, the great privilege of being RJ's supervisor, which is a little bit like being Mozart's piano teacher. You just sit and listen. And like many of us, I learned way more from RJ than I ever taught him. And early on, we sat down at a dive restaurant, and he asked a lot about my family. And he taught something to me that I share with a lot of people when we come into our organization. I often say, advocacy is the work we get to do. We're very lucky we get to do this. And that quote came from RJ. But the other part was, it's not who we are. So yes, we are, many in this room, advocates. But I'm also a father. We are policy advisors, but I'm also a husband. We are difference makers, but RJ also taught me we're all children of God. And so I'm so fortunate of the impact that he had on this state, on this country, on the organization that I'm very, very proud to work for. Whew. But I'm also very grateful for the impact that he's made on our family, and that my boys will learn to be difference makers, because RJ was a difference maker to me. So on behalf of all of us in this room who is just doing our best to keep it together, we pass our condolences on to you. We love you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Last call. Born in Pennsylvania on September 23rd, 1959, to his parents, Ronald Jacob Hours Sr., of blessed memory, and to Gloria Robb, RJ graduated from Salida High School in 1977, where he attended Boys State and grew his commitment to public service and good government. I was a Girls State graduate from South Carolina myself, so I understand that his love of politics started very early on. Many of you have heard already that about his time at the College of Santa Fe. He graduated there in 1981 with a BA in political science. And during his undergraduate years, he did attend the Washington Semester Program at American University in Washington, D.C. in 1980, where he served as a congressional intern at the office of former Colorado 3rd District Congressman Ray, I should have asked someone how to pronounce. Thank you, Kvosik. My Southern tongue cannot pronounce these. Okay, so those of you who don't know, he met his wife Tammy through politics. She told me that she was working in committee and he came to a caucus. And so politics was not only important in his intellectual soul and presence and being, but also a huge part of his heart and of his spirituality and of his blessings. When he told me that when Tammy and her children told me they did many campaigns together with him over the years, I wasn't surprised, but I will acknowledge a small bit of surprise when she said that they both agreed on a honeymoon together through Colonial Williamsburg, Yorktown, Monticello, Alschlawn, Bull Run, Gettysburg, Baltimore, and DC. It's amazing they ever had children with all that travel and all that. You all have mentioned that RJ served at the American Cancer Society and the Cancer Action Network for over 20 years. He started there in 2004. But before coming to the Cancer Society, he worked as a research analyst with the National Conference of State Legislatures, as director of special projects to former Colorado Lieutenant Governor Mike Callahan, and as an appointed aide to former Denver City Council members Polly Flobeck and Ramona Martinez, and as Director of Public and Intragovernmental Relations to former Denver City Auditor Don Mars. Mars? Thank you so much. As I've listened to all of your tributes today, I am reminded of how much difference one person can make in our own individual lives. So after the service today, you will be invited to stick around here and share memories, or you can head out to the Smoke-Free Cherry Cricket or to the Lowry Beer Garden, one of my favorite places in Denver. The next time, for those of you who are too young for this, don't worry, your time's coming. The next time that you go in for your colonoscopy, you can think of RJ and how grateful you are for everything he has done to truly impact your most intimate life's moments. It's the week after Easter, friends, and for Christian pastors, this is like the day after the Super Bowl for professional football players. We're really tired, and you all have made this so beautiful and enjoyable for me, and I know for his family, it is a privilege to be able to laugh and to share lighthearted moments, even while we continue to face this dark and terrible thing called grief. And so I just want to thank each of you for coming today. As our time draws to a close, I hope to offer you some assurance from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 1. These are words that Jesus Christ himself spoke to his closest friends and disciples when he was trying to help them understand that he would soon die, and they were wrestling with the idea of losing him. He said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." Even if you don't believe in God today, I hope that you can believe in RJ and in the example that he set for so many of us as a loving father, spouse, brother, brother-in-law, uncle, friend, colleague, and all of the other roles that he played as a mentor and a support for each and every one of you. Whatever you may believe about life and death, one thing is certain. RJ has now boldly gone where none of us has ever gone before. I'll tell my husband you liked that one. RJ passed from this life on Tuesday, March the 31st, at the age of 66, from complications following a heart surgery last year. and he has been laid to rest via a water cremation, something even I, as an ordained pastor, had never heard of, but something that is a testament to his respect for indigenous spirituality and the beliefs of the holistic nature of life. The nutrient-rich water that was used to help deconstruct RJ's body will be donated to local farms to help enrich the soil for more crops to grow. And so RJ lived and died as he believed, surrounded by the love of his family, his friends, and his colleagues. Today, we too surround him and one another with our love and our compassion. Will you please join me in an attitude of prayer or reverence as I share a prayer called the Prayer of Committal from the United Methodist tradition. This returns RJ back to the place from which he came, and it closes with the Lord's Prayer, which I invite you to join me in speaking aloud. We will use the traditional Catholic version, and for those of you who don't know, it stops short a few lines of the other version. So just be ready. I wrote it for myself so I don't screw it up. So let us be in an attitude of prayer. Oh, mysterious and powerful God, you are the giver of all life, and especially during this Easter season, we celebrate you as the conqueror of death. We know that your love is stronger than any hate or political division or despair that we may experience. We know that your example in sending your Son, Jesus Christ, was an example of hope, even in the darkest times of empire and strife. So this morning, God, we come before you humbled, with our hearts filled with grief and joy, tears and laughter. We come in awe and stilled in the face of something so vast, so incomprehensible, and so uncertain as death. And yet we know that death is a part of life, and life is a part of death, and so the cycle continues on and on. And we ask this morning that in our own lives, as we experience losses, death, and grief, that you help us to see the hope of new beginnings, that you help us to find faith in your great mercy and in your wisdom. And we entrust Ronald, Jacob, RJ Hours Jr., now to your eternal care. Before he was ours, he is yours. We thank you for all that he was and all that he continues to be in the hearts of those who love him and in the presence of your glory. Embrace each person gathered in this room today as you embrace those joining us online in Arizona and Utah and beyond, as you embrace all those who would wish to be with us today, just as you embrace RJ with your powerful love and your unending grace. We ask your presence and your blessings through your Son, Jesus Christ, who taught us all how to pray together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. As I mentioned, you all are welcome to stay here in this room or outside as long as you would like, sharing memories. The family will be moving to a private time of gathering. And so I pray before you go that each of you takes comfort in knowing that although his life was cut short far too early, RJ is now at peace. He is relieved from all forms of suffering, and he is filled with effortless joy as he looks down on you and continues to live on through your legacy and your work. I ask that you receive now this blessing from the Lord. The Lord bless and keep you, and may God's face shine upon you and be gracious and give you peace. Amen.